All right, I think Kerri Urbahn joining us now, John, Fox News legal editor. Kerri, your thoughts?
Yeah, this was the right decision by the Department of Justice. As has been mentioned, we were expecting this, but this is because of DOJ's long-standing policy about not indicting/prosecuting a sitting president. And it looks like that Jack Smith's team did, in fact, seek the guidance of DOJ's Office of Legal Counsel, which is like the general counsel for the Department of Justice, in asking for these cases, the indictment to be dismissed, and OLC concluded that the prohibition on the federal indictment of a sitting president is, quote, categorical. And so that's why we knew this was coming. The Department of Justice made the right decision here following longstanding policy, and also not just the policy, but it's also in the best interest of the country, given Donald Trump's resounding win just recently.
You know, Kerri, we knew that this was going to happen, so it's no surprise, but it is rather interesting to note that after all of this money that was spent, out of all of this time that was spent, all of the prosecutors and the attorneys that Smith had working for his office on these two cases, that it just gets summarily dropped because of two things: the Supreme Court decision about immunity and the fact that a majority of Americans, more than 76 million, said they like Donald Trump. They don't care what he's accused of doing. They wanted him to be president.
But your question gets to the wisdom of even bringing this case in the first place. You have the January 6th cases, you have the classified documents cases. I've said this many times on air. Just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should. And there are all kinds of things that a prosecutor weighs. There are all kinds of things that an attorney general weighs. It's a lot more gray than people realize. Yes, you balance the law, but you also balance what is fair, and you also balance what is good for the health of a nation. When you are coming at a former sitting president and the possible future president, you have to be so incredibly careful, and you better hope, and your case, I should say, better be rock solid. I mean, there's no chance of it getting overturned. There's no novel legal theories, none of that. And in the January 6 cases, that just wasn't true. They were bringing untested legal theories. In other words, they were bringing the law against Donald Trump in a way that it had not been applied before. The Supreme Court addressed actually an aspect of the law that they were attempting to bring against both Donald Trump and all the January 6 defendants. And the Supreme Court said, hey, look, this law that you're using against Trump and these defendants, it's not a blank check that you can kind of insert and write into what you want it to be. And that happened in June. Then you had the Supreme Court immunity decision. And so, again, while, yes, to your point, $50+ million was spent, the reality is it didn't have to happen in the first place. And that's, going to be something debated, I think, by historians for a long time.
Kerri, thank you. Please do stay with us. Jonathan Turley going to jump into the conversation now. The breaking news that Special Counsel Jack Smith has asked the judge to dismiss this Trump DC case. Jonathan, also adding to this from our own Jake Gibson, that the Special Counsel Jack Smith's team also sought the guidance of the DOJ's Office of Legal Counsel, the OLC, concluded that the prohibition on the federal indictment of a sitting president is categorical. Jonathan, your reaction to the news?
Well, this is what we expected. I wrote over a year ago that there was a good chance Jack Smith would never see the inside of a courtroom for a trial in this case. It made this election the largest effective jury verdict in history by re-electing Donald Trump. The special counsel found himself at odds with his own department's longstanding policy against the prosecution of a sitting president. But Smith did not go quietly into that night. I expect that he did get a lot of different opinions, hoping for the right one. But the OLC, this office that handles such questions, has long taken this position. So it would be doubtful that they would change it here. But, Smith had a sort of a gratuitous end to his term. He pushed not only for a trial before the election, and he pushed for months for that, but he also released damaging information before the election, something that many people saw as an effort to influence the election. Smith knew that if Trump won, he was out of a job. And this release of the information was entirely unnecessary. The judge admitted that it was procedurally irregular, but she went along with it. And I think that did tarnish his position, and certainly in history, because he didn't have to do that. He had become so absolutely fixated on trying Trump before the election that he lost credibility, I think, with the courts. He went up to the Supreme Court. They didn't accept that that was the overriding consideration in looking at these legal issues. I think it's also very important to remember that Smith's case was riddled with constitutional problems. You know, when the Supreme Court reached its immunity decision, it was clear that he would have to pare down his indictment. He really didn't do it to the degree he needed to do. He took a very minimalist approach. He removed a few references, a few witnesses that stemmed from the first Trump presidency. But he largely just repackaged it. And some of us said that we thought that it was not enough, that if he ever did go to trial, he could be reversed just on that basis.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.